Hello, everybody, and welcome into another video today here on the Around the Slice YouTube channel. In today's video, I will be providing you with my NFL head coach hot seat rankings after week 5 has been completed, heading into week 6 tomorrow night with Thursday Night Football with the Seahawks and 49ers. I have compiled a list of 13 head coaches that I think are on the hot seat to one degree or another, and compiled those 13 head coaches into 3 different tiers. I'll reveal the tiers one by one and who's in them. Now, full transparency, Robert Saleh is easily going to be number 1 on this list, but the judge already took care of that yesterday. If you want my full thoughts on that, I made a quick 10 or so minute video yesterday breaking that all down, but that's already taken care of. Judge got ahead of that, apparently. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here I want to preface this with this. For all 3 tiers, these aren't ranked like 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. Like, these aren't ranked within the tiers. These are just random order within the tiers. Like, so don't take the rankings like who I mentioned first, second, last, whatever. Just don't take that with just don't don't know how to word it, but just don't take that into account where it's ordered. It's just names. First, C is on fire. So basically, 1 or 2 more losses and they're fired, or if the year goes south, they're fired, or if they don't meet expectations at all, they're fired, and I'll explain why. Jaguars, Doug Peterson. This is the most obvious one I've seen in quite some time, quite many years, I should say, because they started 0-4. They mean the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars started 0-4. And in my opinion, after the 0-4 start, Doug Peterson should have been let go. Now, I understand that him and his team, and he led his team to victory and picked up a win against the Indianapolis Colts and Joe Flacco, but they almost and honestly should have blown a lead to Joe Flacco and the Colts. They're 1-4. Congratulations. You bought yourself one more week when you're with your first victory of the season. Now you go from 0-4 to 1-4. Big deal there. And he doesn't have a terrible offense, Doug Peterson. Yeah, the offensive line is dreadful, but Trevor Lawrence, they just gave a huge contract to. He has Travis Etienne, and then Tank Bigsby's coming along in his backup nicely. I know Evan Ingram's been injured, but Brenton Strange is at least serviceable if you want to look at it that way. And then at wide receivers, I'm not going to include Gabe Davis, but BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., has been on fire as a rookie. Christian Kirk is that underneath slot machine. So you have a couple of nice pieces on defense on the edge rushers with Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, and a good group of linebackers. I know he was placed on IR, but before you had Foye Lukun, Devin Lloyd, Chad Muma, you're getting Tyson Campbell back. Secondary is pretty atrocious, but the defense is underperforming and underwhelming. And in my opinion, Doug Peterson has lost this locker room. So you went from 0-4 to 1-4, but in my opinion, he should have been fired after the 0-4 start, and then he bought himself another week, I guess. I'm not in love with that GM and ownership and how that organization is run over there in Florida and Jacksonville, but it is what it is, I guess. I said these weren't ranked 1-4, 1 through whatever in this case, but this is pretty easily number 1 if I had to put a pulse on it and had a ranking on it, if you will. Next, seat on fire, Cowboys, Mike McCarthy. And I should preface also throw in a tidbit here that these hot seat rankings are a mixture of what I personally believe and what I've been hearing in terms of Twitter rumors and just chat around the league, if you will, and stuff like that. But Cowboys, Mike McCarthy. I've said this for the past 2 or 3 years. If Mike McCarthy does not if the Cowboys do not reach at least the NFC Championship this year, which, mind you, something they haven't done in 30 plus years by now, around 30 years, I believe it is, then Mike McCarthy should be gone. I'll reiterate, if they don't reach at least the NFC Championship this year, Mike McCarthy should be gone. Now, I personally think Mike McCarthy should have been fired after last year. It's the same song and dance, same crap at the Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys, every single year. They look killer in the regular season with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. Now Rico Dowdle's coming along nicely. Still have Jake Ferguson at tight end. kill the regular season, then they get bounced in one round. It's not even one and done because they don't even win their first matchup. Mike McCarthy should have been fired after last year, in my opinion. And I do not view, like, there's teams around the league that are physical. When they play, they're just physical. Whether it's the trenches, O-line, D-line, receivers, defensive backs, they're physical. The Dallas Cowboys are not a physical team whatsoever. They don't meet the standard of being a physical team. I think they're one of, if not the softest teams in the league just by how they play. And, CeeDee Lamb's always getting them. And you guys know, well, you may not know, but I absolutely adore CeeDee Lamb. Like, he's easily my favorite non-Bills player in the entire league. But yeah, I absolutely adore CeeDee Lamb, but he's arguing with Dak Prescott. So fact of the matter is, if they don't reach the NFC Championship game at minimum, at least for that fan base, then Mike McCarthy should be gone. But I don't know if Jerry Jones will actually pull the trigger. You would think he would be impatient by now, being 80 years old, being around forever as the GM, president, owner, all that crap. But he holds on to coaches for way too long. He holds on for coaches for way too long. He held on for Jason Garrett for 2, 3, maybe even 4 years longer than he should have. And I know the defense is all on Mike McCarthy because it's a pretty big downgrade from Dan Quinn, who's now the head coach of the Commanders, which, what a wonderful situation there with Jaden Daniels and them falling out. But fact of the matter is, Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer is a pretty big downgrade. I didn't think it would be, but Mike Zimmer's, structurally, his defense is outdated. But that's just my thoughts on the whole Mike McCarthy, Dallas Cowboys situation. Second to last guy here in the seat is on fire tier. Eagles, Nick Sirianni. Now, this has really percolated over the last couple of weeks. But in my opinion, Nick Sirianni gets too much hate. He leads the Eagles to the Super Bowl in 2022, and the Eagles are one botched holding call by the refs on Juju Smith-Schuster from winning the Super Bowl, or at least at minimum going to overtime. And then a year later, Eagles collapse. There's reports they lost the locker room last year, and Nick Sirianni's everyone, especially Eagles fans, Nick Sirianni's head on a stick. I don't really get it. I blame more of the collapse, offensive and defensive, respectively, on the coordinators, Brian Johnson, and then Sean Desai / Matt Patricia. The whole situation was weird. There was a report that Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni's relationship was fractured beyond repair, even going into this year. The offensive line is still pretty good. I know you're going from Jason Kelce, Cam Jurgens, and he's had a few more penalties than you would ideally even like over there. But Nick Sirianni gets too much hate, in my opinion. But I will admit, like, if he doesn't win a playoff game this year, he's probably out. This is one of these ones, though, I wouldn't personally do. But again, this is a mixture of what I would personally do and what I've been hearing. And what I've been hearing is everyone, especially Eagles fans, mind you, want Nick Sirianni's head on a stick. I just think, personally, he gets a little too much hate. So, and then lastly, in the seat is on fire tier. So the hottest of hot, if you will, literally seat is on fire. Saints head coach Dennis Allen. They started 2-0, and now they've lost 3 in a row. They should probably be 4-1 right now at minimum, but I won't go as far as 5-0. But like, they've blown a few leads, or they just run trailing big early like they did with the Chiefs. Their defense has been elite, amazing. Their offense is kind of stuttered. Rashid Shaheed is a baller. Every time he touches the ball, huge play incoming. But they haven't gotten Chris Olave. Chris Olave is an elite route runner and very, very underrated deep threat, and he has a very underrated killer speed as well. I don't understand. Like, Alvin Kamara, dud of a game against the Chiefs. Dennis Allen started 2-0 and lost 3 in a row. Now they're 2-3. And it's unfortunate, but he's probably going to get the Derek Carr has an oblique injury. Now he's out for 2 to 4 weeks. So Jake Hayner's not going to start. So Spencer Rattler is going to start the next handful of weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, give or take, right around there. And Dennis Allen's probably going to get the injury excuse of, if they don't make the playoffs, well, we missed Derek Carr for about a month and blah, blah, blah. But I also hate how the Saints do business. Like, GM Mickey Loomis, that's his name, right? Yeah, GM Mickey Loomis, he has an atrocious business plan, in my opinion. Every single year, they have like 70, 80, even 90 million, close to 100 million dead cap, and restructure. And they push that money down, push that money back. And every year, it's the same song and dance of They don't make the playoffs. They're always a 7-8, maybe on a rare good year. You have a 9-win team. I just hate how they do business. At some point, you're going to have to pay the piper, if you will. Stop restructuring and pushing all this crap back into future years. But Dennis Allen should be fired, if you ask me. But he'll probably have the injury excuse of no Carr and starting Rattler and all that. And defensively, he's a really excellent, in my opinion. I said this about Robert Saleh yesterday. He's an excellent defensive coordinator, but not a head coach. He hasn't lost the locker room yet, but like if it's the struggle and his allegiances is tied too much to Spencer Rattler, then I think it could get ugly. But that's just my thoughts on the whole Dennis Allen situation. So that's the seat is on fire tier. Next, we have seat is high. These aren't guys absolutely burning up in flames right now, but like if things go south in the next few weeks, these guys are probably not in season firing, but like if things go south after the season, you really have to take things in perspective for the GM or owners respectively on those franchises and teams. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. Dolphins fans themselves are pretty fed up with him, I think. I do not think it was smart for Stephen Ross. He's one of the richest owners in the entire league and honestly all sports. Baseball, basketball, football, soccer, hockey, you name it. One of the richest owners in all sports. And he extended GM Chris Greer. Okay, I don't care about that. But head coach Mike McDaniel, in my opinion, Mike McDaniel is a good play designer, but not a good play caller, if that makes sense. He abandons the run too much. He does a lot of window dressing and pre-step motion during plays, and then his execution is poor, and he has no excuse for this. They have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Rice coming along nicely, Jonnu Smith at tight end. Defense, though, is absolutely atrocious. Like, they lost Christian Wilkins, and it shows. They added Jordan Poyer. Okay, he's washed 1 foot out the door for retirement anyway. They have Javon Holland, who's going to miss the next 3 or 4 weeks, and very realistically, probably an IR candidate. So their defense is not what I care about. I care about so-called McDaniel offensive genius. He's not really an offensive genius since he's been hired. Maybe the first year was hired, but that, all that pop and circumstance, if you will, has kind of worn off. And if he loses in the last 2 years in a row, he's lost the wild card round. If he loses in the wild card round again this year, 3 years in a row, I would personally fire him. I just don't think Stephen Ross's owner, Miami Dolphins owner, is willing to eat that money. That should be no problem for him because, like I just said, he's one of the richest men in sports and one of the richest owners, bottom line, in sports. He should be okay with eating that money, but I don't think he will be. So I think it was kind of a death sentence to extend Mike McDaniel before the season in mid-August like you did. Yeah. Bengals, Zach Taylor. No one's talking about this enough, but like the way everyone wants to say Sean McDermott's blunder against Houston. But Zach Taylor's is arguably equally as bad. Like they start 0-3, they get a win 1-3, and now they lose the Ravens to 1-4. And like Joe Burrow is he leads the league in passing yards, leads the league in passing touchdowns. Damn near at the top for completion percentage. And then Jamar Chase, he had 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. T. Higgins also had 2 touchdowns. Joe Burrow had 5 total passing touchdowns, most recently against the Baltimore Ravens, and atrocious pass defense. Like, so Joe Burrow, like the whole offense is amazing, but their defense, man, is absolutely garbage. I'm sorry I'm put bluntly, but it's absolute trash. Like, there's no other way to put it. They're going to have to put 30, 40, 50 points up every single week. Like, when they're going against the Chiefs, 50 points. Like, that's how you're going to compete. But Zach Taylor, like, he iced his own kicker. So they're in overtime, right? On first down, you run it, you get a yard. Second down, you run it, you get a yard. Third down, you run it, you get a yard. So 3 runs, 3 yards, and then you kick a 53-yard field goal. And, like, I know Evan McPherson's an excellent kicker, but, like, 53 yards, like, this isn't some, like, chip shot gimme. This isn't, like, 45 yards. Like, anything inside 45, fine. But 50-plus in overtime, it's a lot of pressure. And then Evan McPherson comes up to kick the field goal, and Zach Taylor ices his own kicker. I don't really understand the method. So, and then Bengals players were kind of turning against Zach Taylor and outspoken about how the play calling should always be more aggressive and it shouldn't be that conservative, especially in that situation. People aren't talking about this enough. I think Zach Taylor, like, he probably he kind of found his way in my good graces last year, if you will. I was really impressed with what he was able to do and stick into it with the last week or two of the season with Jake Browning last year and the whole mess with the offensive line and Joe Burrow going down for the year and the drama with T. Higgins in the offseason, now Jamar Chase. But like Zach Taylor's not head on a stick, but Zach Taylor's job needs to be in serious question. Again, this category is seat is hot, probably more than likely reconfigure things and look at things from an ownership level top down after the season. So these aren't in-season moves. Bears head coach Matt Eberflus. Eberflus, I don't know. Eberflus, I guess it is. Bears head coach Matt Eberflus. This is a really, really interesting one, guys, because like people wanted him fired after last year. I was not one of those. Personally, he's teetering the line, but personally, I wouldn't do this until maybe next year. You just got a number one overall pick in Caleb Williams. He has awesome weapons in DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, and somehow they're 3-2. Like they're an underrated, under the radar, if you will, 3-2 team. I would not do this with Matt Eberflus because his defense is awesome. Like I love their secondary with Tyreek Stevenson, and Jalen Johnson, who's a superstar, is your two outside corners. And then flat corners, Kyler Gordon. And your star safety duo is Jaquan Brisker, who I love, big fan, big young player in his third year in the league. And Kevin Byard, who's a really good veteran, maybe not a star anymore, but very, very good veteran. Offensive line is atrocious for Caleb, and they can't really run the ball with it. It's Roschon Johnson or DeAndre Swift. They have some spike weeks here and there, like the last couple of weeks, but I would not fire Matt Eberflus. I understand why you do, though, but if the Bears don't at least compete for a playoff spot by early January, late December, early January, whenever it is, week 17 and 18, or at least get to like 8 or 9 wins, then he probably will be fired. I just wouldn't personally do it because I've seen a lot of growth from Matt Eberflus in his first year in 2022 to now in the midst of his third year right now in 2024. Second to last guy in this seat is hot category in our hot seat rankings today is Browns Kevin Stefanski. Now, I will give him some pause. That doesn't make sense. I will give him a little grace, guys, because he has Deshaun Watson. One, he's a terrible human being. And two, he's even worse on the football field. Like, the team is so disconnected. I'm surprised he hasn't lost the locker room. Now, he has won Coach of the Year twice, but in my opinion, he's way too loyal to Deshaun Watson. He refuses to bench him for Jameis Winston. Whether that's coming from ownership, the Haslams, giving Deshaun Watson that egregious contract right after the 24, now up to 25 lawsuits from those different women. You already know about it. I'm not going to rehash it 1,000 times over. Horrible situation. Or it's just top down from GM Andrew Bear saying, you need to stick with this guy. The contract looks horrible. I would eat the money, damn near $100 million dead cap this offseason and just move on, rethink everything, fire GM Andrew Barry, fire head coach Kevin Stefanski, cut Deshaun Watson and move on with the almost $100 million dead cap and move on with your life, draft the quarterbacks, re-sign Jameis Winston for insurance. I don't know, but Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion, should be fired, even though he's won Coach of the Year twice and what he did last year with Joe Flacco, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And his defense this year is underperforming as well, which they've had an elite defense ever since he's been there the last 2 or 3 years, especially last year. It was just dominant. Myles Garrett's fine, but other than that, you're not getting much from Zadarius Smith. He had 2 sacks this past week against the Commanders, but outside of that, not much. So Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion, again, these aren't ranked, but he needs to be more talked about as a legit firing. And then Giants head coach Brian Daboll. I was going to put him in the seat is on fire category, but like they're 2-3. And what they just did on Sunday, going into Seattle, beating the Seahawks 29-20, a cross-country road trip in the air, it was even a cross-country trip going from the East Coast to the West Coast, the whole Eastern time zone, the Pacific time zone. You got to adjust your body and all that. Teams usually are horrible at that. Or very underwhelming at the very least. But the Giants came in and they won by multiple scores, 29-20. That's a 2-score win, 2-possession win over the Seahawks, which Geno and his receivers look very in sync right now. They do look very in sync, I should say, rather. Excuse me, sorry about that. But yeah, this is really, really encouraging for the Giants. So Brian Daboll might have bought himself a little bit of time. Maybe it's not an in-season firing. It's just after the year firing. I will say, though, if you fire him after the year, then you're going to have to fire GM Joe Schoen as well. But I love Joe Schoen's 2024 draft class. Not to go off on a tangent here, off topic, but it's looking very nice. Hidden gems with Tyrone Tracy, Malik Neighbors, obviously, is already a superstar. And I really like that defense. That defense is underrated. The only weak part is the secondary is pretty bad. It's kind of Deontay Banks and what else? Nothing really. So Brian Dable, I think he bought himself maybe it's not in season firing anymore. Firing anymore, but rather an after the season firing. If you want to assess things from top down, this third of three final categories, tiers, if you will, whatever you want to call them, seat is getting warm. These guys won't be fired in season. I highly doubt they'll be fired after the season as well, but things go south real quickly. Like, they could very well be on the chopping block, if you will, and their seat is getting warm. They have some pressure on it. Now, first, you know where I'm going with this. I'm a Bills fan, so this really, really hurts me deep inside. Really hurts my heart to say this, but Bills Sean McDermott, the way he's managed late game situations, whether it was 2 years ago with the Vikings and Jets, last year with the Broncos and Eagles, and then just this Sunday, respectively, with the Texans, it's not looking good. And if we lose, I said this yesterday in the Saleh video, if we lose to the New Jersey Circus, if we lose to that circus of an organization, the Jets, McDermott seriously needs to be fired after the season, or at least have the conversation. I'd hate to have the conversation, but like, we need to have the conversation because he's shown over and over that he's absolutely atrocious in late game situations. His brain turns to mush. Apparently, he's never seen a football field before. So it pains me to say that. It hurts my heart to say that, but it is what it is. Next, Raiders, Antonio Pierce. In my opinion, they shouldn't fire him, especially with Mark Davis and that ownership group's whole cash flow struggles, and they always struggle with money, and they were hesitating to fire Josh McDaniels for a few weeks because they didn't, but they just ate the money anyway, and they had to pay out a big chunk of the rest of his salary. In my opinion, Antonio Pierce, interim head coach, the current head coach, I really like his. I will say his defense is underwhelming pretty mightily, and they just lost Christian Wilkins for 9 or 10 weeks. So I doubt he even comes back this season with a Jones fracture in his foot. So the defense is pretty atrocious, and it's kind of underwhelmed. Not kind of a lot. And then they don't know how to maximize their weapons. The whole drama with Devontae Adams right now. Trey Tucker's a nice little piece, but they don't know how to maximize Jacoby Myers. Michael Mayer's just nothing, I guess. And then Brock Bowers. I know he had 97 yards and a touchdown this past weekend specifically, but I don't know. I feel like this ownership group is kind of like a stupid ownership group, to put it bluntly. I don't know. I don't like Mark Davis, and they always have cash flow issues. I would not fire Antonio Pierce just after half a year as interim coach and not even half a year as full-time head coach. I just wouldn't do it. That roster doesn't have much talent, in my opinion. GM Tom Telesco was just hired as well. I won't fire either of them, but if you want to fire one of them, fire Tom Telesco, because I don't think an indictment on the GM, I don't think he built a very good roster over there, especially defensive pieces, which is very underwhelming. Next, Panthers, Dave Canales. I wouldn't even consider this if it was up to me personally, but David Tepper. He's a stupid head coach. He's fired 2 head coaches in season in a row. Matt Rule after 4 weeks in 2022, or 5 weeks in 2022, I think it was. And then last year, Frank Reich after 10 games or 11, somewhere around there, mid-November 2023. And then he's going to fire, if he does this again, that will be 3 head coach firings in a row, 3 in-season head coach firings for David Tepper. Eat a bunch of money, and he's just a clown of an owner, in my opinion. Everyone knows it. I wouldn't even consider this, but you never know David Tepper. He's kind of a nuts clown of an owner, like I just said. And then 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. This is kind of the same Sean McDermott thing. They've had tons of success, and even more so Kyle Shanahan, because he's always in the NFC Championship. He's always in the Super Bowl. He's always contending right there, but they can never get over the hump, just like the Bills. But Kyle Shanahan, when he has a lead, he gets very nutty, very stupid with his play calls. He tries to get too cute, if you will, and there's no excuses to get cute because you have Jordan Mason coming along, and then you still have George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, even Juwan Jennings now. But the defense, which I'm very surprised about, is very underwhelmed. Fred Warner has been awesome, but other than that, everything else is underwhelmed. Kyle Shanahan's got to be feeling the heat a little. I don't know if they'll pull the trigger, but it's worth a conversation of things like if they even miss the playoffs altogether, which could happen because they're 2-3 right now. It's worth a conversation from the ownership and GM top down if you really want to go that far after the season. So yeah, guys, there's head coaches. Oh, sorry. There's 13 head coaches separated into 3 different tiers. So yeah, I really looking forward to doing more videos like this, more breakdowns like this, aside from the regular podcast episodes. I will see you in the next video or podcast episode whenever I see you next. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for supporting as always. Bye.